Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Safety Included, the Workplace Health and Safety webinar series presented by Encompass Michigan. We're the statewide network of comprehensive human service providers working together to develop independence and achieve inclusive communities. My name is Todd Culver. I'm the president and CEO here at Encompass Michigan. And we're very pleased that you could join us this afternoon. We're still gathering, but we do have a lot of information to cover, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Our topic today is ergonomics, and our presenters will be Jamie Green. We're very fortunate to have Jamie with us from the MyOSHA SET division, as well as our own Katie Kinde, who's education coordinator here at the association, and they'll introduce themselves in a moment. Before they do, a note about this project. The material for the presentation was prepared under a Consultation Education and Training, or SET grant, awarded by the Michigan Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or MyOSHA, which is a part of the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity. Encompass Michigan has a long-standing and valued partnership with MyOSHA, and we appreciate their support on this project. Jamie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, we're going to keep it simple. That's a lot to read there, but I've been with MyOSHA 5 years now, hired in during COVID time. And it was after 30 years of private industry work. I thought it was time for a change, and I've been happily surprised that the amount of people I can affect and reach out to. So it was a perfect fit for me, and I'm happy to be here today and talk about ergonomics.
Thanks for joining us, Jamie. Katie, would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Yes. Oh, yeah, my mic is on. Yes, hello. My name is Katie Kinde. I am a autistic self-advocate who loves learning and also I like helping others learn as well. I graduated with a master's in education with a focus in learning design and technology because of that. I graduated in 2021. I currently work for Encompass Michigan as the education coordinator. So I create trainings, coordinate events, and handle certificate distribution. I've done a lot of leadership programs. I'm on the board for Michigan Advocates to End Seclusion and Restraint. And I have a lot of hobbies that I like to do, but we'll keep this moving along.
Thanks, Katie. Quick note about the content. Inclusivity is very important to us here at Encompass Michigan, and that is reflected, we hope, in this presentation, which is made with all needs in mind. We try to avoid using too many colors and pictures, and when we do, we describe them, particularly for the benefit of low vision users. There will be handouts available in a shared drive, and a link will be posted in the chat. With regard to the project itself, another quick note. We adhere to OSHA's recommended practices for safety and health programs. It's a step-by-step approach, focuses on a proactive approach to safety, meaning that we focus on finding and fixing hazards before they cause injury or illness. And that is what this presentation is all about today, providing a framework within ergonomics for effective safety programs that promote prevention. The learning objectives for the ergonomics part will be identification of some common work-related musculoskeletal disorders, which are referred to as MSDs, as well as the risk factors that are associated with those MSDs. And we'll identify ergonomic control measures for eliminating or reducing those work-related musculoskeletal disorders. Some additional learning objectives will include considerations for rendering this training and all trainings more inclusive, particularly with respect to neurodiverse employees, building trust, sensory overload or sensitivities, strategies for delivery and interaction that it will include verbal and nonverbal, using clear signs, developing an emergency or safety buddy, the concept of proprioception, some time buffered schedules and the impact on memory capacity, as well as even the location of the training. And we do hope that we'll provide you with resources from the Safety Included project that will be useful to you moving forward.
All right, thanks, Todd. I'm going
Thank
to
you.
stop sharing my screen and then hand it over to Jamie.
All right, thank you. So in Latin, ergo means work, nomos equals law. Why is ergonomics important? Overexertion is a leading cause of injuries throughout all injuries. According to worker compensations expenses in 2014, ergonomics comprised 32% of that. These are recurring and persistent pain, and it may reoccur in the future. So what we can do for ergonomics is pay attention to our body actions, such as bending, climbing, reaching, standing, sitting, slips, and trips. And again, another big cause of ergonomic issues, or MSDs, as Todd called them earlier, is repetitive motion. MSDs affect the muscles, nerves, blood vessels, ligaments, and tendons. Workers in many different industries and occupations can be exposed to risk factors at work, such as lifting heavy items, bending, reaching, pushing, and pulling heavy loads, as well as working in awkward body postures and performing the same or similar tasks repetitively. Exposure to these known risk factors for MSDs increases a worker's risk of injury. Work-related MSDs can be prevented. Ergonomics helps lessen muscle fatigue, increases productivity, and reduces the number and severity of work-related MSDs. Here we have a chart. I'm just going to highlight the three largest groups. Upper extremities. This is a chart of distribution of injuries and illnesses by part of body from 2014 from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. 30% related to upper extremities, 23% related lower extremities, 17% related to the back itself. The risk of MSD injury depends on work positions and postures, how often the task is performed, the level of required effort, and how long the task lasts. Risk factors that may lead to the development of MSDs include exerting excessive force, shown here in the picture, lifting heavy objects, pulling, pushing, performing the same or similar tasks repetitively. Working in awkward postures or being in the same posture for long periods of time, using positions that place stress on the body, such as prolonged or repetitive reaching above shoulder height, kneeling, squatting, leaning over a counter, using a knife with wrists bent or twisting the torso can create localized pressure on the body, pressing the body or part of the body against hard or sharp edges, or using the hand as a hammer. So let's talk about control methods. So training is an important element in ergonomic process. Training should be conducted in a language and vocabulary that all workers understand and is best provided by individuals who have experience with ergonomic issues in your particular industry. When training is effective, workers will learn the principles of ergonomics and their applications, learn about the proper use of equipment, tools, and machine controls, use good work practices, including proper lifting techniques, become more aware of work tasks that may lead to pain or injury. And we need to understand the importance of reporting and addressing early indications of MSDs before serious injuries develop. Understand your procedures and policies for reporting work-related OSHA or injuries and illnesses as required by OSHA's injury and illness recording and reporting regulations. Here's some examples of engineering controls. We can implement changes to the workplace, which can eliminate or reduce the hazards on a job task. The photos on this slide show the use of a device to lift and reposition heavy objects to limit force exertion, reduce the weight of a load to limit force exertion, reposition a work table to eliminate a long, excessive reach and enable working in neutral positions. Use diverging conveyors off a main line so that tasks are less repetitive. Install diverters or conveyors to direct materials toward the workers to eliminate excessive leaning or reaching. We can also redesign tools to enable neutral postures. So the previous slide talked about engineering controls. Here's some examples of administrative controls or work practice controls. We can have policies that require that heavy loads are only lifted by 2 people to limit force exertion. We need to establish systems so workers are rotated away from tasks to minimize the duration of continual exertion or repetitive motions or awkward postures. We're able to design a job rotation system in which employees rotate between jobs that use different muscle groups. So the last line of defense for our employees is called PPE, or personal protective equipment. This is the last line of defense, and we need to be trained properly on how to use the PPE so it protects us appropriately. Examples of PPE could be padded knee pads to reduce direct contact with hard, sharp, or vibrating surfaces. It could be padded gloves to help with vibrations. Could be thermal gloves such as welding gloves, snow gloves for working outside, and the use of lifting straps, shoulder harnesses, lifting braces, etc. Some solutions that have been put in place from other employers: keep items within close reach, utilize platforms for easier access to items, pull out steps on vehicles, elevate racks that can be lowered to an appropriate height when access is needed. More ways to reduce reach distances: remove obstacles, utilize equipment to raise and lower items or move items closer to work, such as use gravity-fed racks, maybe a small portable forklift, provide pick sticks or hooks to pull small lightweight items closer to the edge prior to lifting. Oops, sorry. So one thing that gets missed a lot within companies and employers is the relation to our head and how much it weighs and where we keep our neck postured, right? So our head weighs 10 to 12 pounds. So over the course of 8 hours, it can become quite evident when your neck is not in a neutral position. Some jobs that might be affected are dental hygienists, microscope work, welding, computer work. Your upper body is 60% of your total body weight. So like your neck holding up your head, it's also a strain for your back to hold in a bent over position for more than 2 hours per day, such as landscapers who work near ground level. Like neck posture, back posture is only covered if the worker is not able to vary his or her posture. If the location of your work is too low, you're going to have to get into an awkward position to get to it. Typically, that means bending your back, kneeling or squatting. It can also mean bending your head and neck forward. If ergonomics is about adapting the work to fit you, instead of asking you to adapt to the work, what do you think some ergonomic solutions might be? I think we got some solutions on the next slide. Next slide after this. Here we have a photo of a person working in a, looks like a grocery store, and of course she's squatting, loading the bottom 3 racks, right? Shelves. Hopefully she doesn't have to do that for more than 2 hours a day. What are some solutions? This first photo is showing kind of like a lift table that has springs on it. So when you remove a box or a level, it goes up. So what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to keep all the weight within our core area. What's our core area? It's typically from the waist to the midsection of your upper torso. Yeah, so if the work, if we can't raise the work, right, like we saw in the previous slide, if that's not possible, can you use a low stool to provide support so that you can sit lower near the level of work? Can we use long-handled tools so we can stand upright and work? If none of these will work, it at least helps some to alternate between different postures so that you don't spend too much time in any one posture. So I think you're getting the drift, right? Like we have to get up, walk around, stretch up, think outside the box of different tools we can use to keep a neutral position. Fewer people know that repetitive lifting can be just as hazardous because of the fatigue it causes. When you lift frequently, you can tire out the muscles, making them more prone to injury. If your muscles can't handle the load, the strain can be shifted to your joints and the discs in your spine, placing them at risk for injury too. Here's another example of computer work that, if we're sitting down for 4 hours, maybe we can get up, stretch around, rotate our necks side to side, just get out of that position for a while, right? Repetitive motions may be required by your job. However, a lot of times you have some control over what motions you make and how often you make them. Things you can do to reduce repetitive motions include arrange work to avoid unnecessary motions, let power tools and machinery do the work, spread repetitive work out during the day, take stretch pauses, rotate tasks with coworkers if possible, change hands or motions frequently. Oops. Again, we're trying to highlight in this first photo, we have a sharp edge, we have our wrists against that sharp edge, and our wrists and fingers are not in a neutral position. So what can we do to kind of help that situation there? We can manipulate the keypad, raise it, lower it, move it, slant it forward a little bit. Those type of simple solutions, right? That's the great thing about ergonomics. It really doesn't have to take a lot of capital or a lot of money to invest into simple ergonomic solutions, right? That's the whole point. Just about every job requires some lifting, but lifting only becomes a risk for injury if it's heavy lifting or if it's done frequently or in an awkward position. For the caution zone, heavy lifting is any lift of 75 pounds or more once per day, or 55 pounds 10 or more times per day. Frequent lifting is 10 pounds or more than twice per minute for more than 2 hours per day. Awkward lifts are lifts of 25 pounds or more above the shoulders, below the knees, or out at arm's length, done more than 25 times per day. We can see here in the bottom right picture, right? Looks like maybe a Costco or similar facility. We have a cart full of goods, and the employee is bent over, awkward position, outreached, and I don't know exactly how much that weighs, but it's probably over 10 pounds. What can we do better? How can we eliminate that type of work, right? That's what we have to think about day to day. Most people are aware that lifting heavy objects increase the risk for injury. The load on the low back when lifting something heavy can strain the muscles and damage the disc in your spine. The load can strain the muscles in the shoulders and upper back as well. NIOSH has a lifting equation that can help you with your job tasks. So what NIOSH came out with, there's an app. It's called the lifting equation or something similar to that. You can download, put it on your phone, type in the pertinent data for your task. And it'll tell you, how many hours you can work at that task, that kind of information. So what can we do as an employer? We can plan the workflow to eliminate unnecessary lifts. We can organize the work so that the physical demands and work pace increase gradually. We can minimize the distances loads are lifted and lowered. We can position pallets of materials at a height that allow workers to lift and lower within their power zone. We can avoid manually lifting or lowering loads. We can arrange materials to arrive on a pallet. We can arrange to have materials offloaded directly onto storage shelves. Try to use mechanical devices whenever possible. For loads that are unstable and heavy, tag the load to alert workers. Test the load for stability and weight before carrying the load. Use mechanical devices or equipment to lift the load. Reduce the weight of the load by putting fewer items in the container, using a smaller and or lighter weight container. Again, mention team lifting as a way to reduce injuries. We can provide clear spaces to improve access to material or products being handled. So we're not, jumping over things, trying to be outstretched. If we have, good housekeeping practices in place, shouldn't be an issue, right? Stretching. The use of stretching is appropriate as part of a comprehensive ergonomic program. Stretching must not be used in place of engineering or administrative improvements. Check for tags on loads. Before lifting, always test the load for stability and weight. For loads that are unstable and or heavy, follow management guidelines. Here's an example of some guidelines. Wear appropriate shoes to avoid slip, trips, or falls. If you wear gloves, choose the size that fits properly. Depending on the material the gloves are made of and the number of pairs worn at once, more force may be needed to grasp and hold objects. For example, wearing a single pair of heat-resistant gloves can reduce your grip strength up to 40%. Wearing 2 or more pairs of gloves at once can reduce your grip strength up to 60%. Lift only as much as you can safely handle by yourself. Keep the lifts in your power zone. Use extra caution when lifting loads that may be unstable. When lifting, get a secure grip. Use both hands whenever possible. Avoid jerking by using smooth, even motions. Keep the load as close as possible. Do not twist your body, step to one side or the other. Alternate heavy lifting or forceful exertion tasks with less physical demanding tasks. Here, these photos are just trying to convey proper lifting techniques. Bend at your knees, try to keep your back as straight as possible. Use those leg muscles, and make sure that item is in your core power zone, right? Just a different example, showing the same thing, how to lift something properly. In summary, here are the key points to remember about ergonomics. Ergonomics is a tool you can use to make your job safer and better. Washington State has a rule that requires some employers to implement ergonomics in the workplace. In jobs with enough exposure to risk factors, work-related MSDs can occur. By applying ergonomics, risk factors can be reduced and MSDs can be prevented. We can't stress this point enough. If you start having symptoms of a MSD, be sure you report them early to avoid more serious injury. You are the expert when it comes to your job, and you can play an important role in your company's ergonomic efforts. Ergonomics can be more than just a one-time fix. It can be an ongoing process that you and your employer can use to make things better. Thank you for your time, and I'll take questions if there are any questions.
There was a question in the chat actually, that I wanted to read out, if that's okay, Jamie.
Yep, go ahead. I can't see it.
So there are weights and times listed in one of the slides, and a viewer named Tammy asked, "Are those weights and times determined by OSHA?" And I think it was like the like 75 for 1 hour or.
Yeah, so there is no ergonomic standard. What does that mean? It means there's no specific rules for ergonomics, so therefore there's no call out of how much an individual can or cannot lift, can or cannot push. However, the bucket that enforcement would cite is called general duty. And if somebody needs information on what a general duty citation is, I'd be more than happy to email them a quick summary. Basically, it needs to meet 4 elements for enforcement, and that's how it's cited. And it is being enforced. And yeah, I see there's somebody asked about a lifting calculator. Yes. NIOSH has a lifting calculator, as well as another good one I like is Oregon State has a great ergonomic lifting calculator, as well as Washington State. So Washington State, Oregon State, and NIOSH, look at those websites, and in my mind, those are, the 4 runners in ergonomics. Good question.
Let us continue with the training. This is how to train effectively. So, what we believe here at Encompass Michigan is each person, regardless of neurotype, has a preferred learning method. And the following is meant to help employers improve training methods for better outcomes. If you're an employee, you can also take these ideas to your employers as well. So it's not just limited to employers. Um, so considerations of neurodiverse employees. Employees of different neurotypes may have different needs to consider. Talking to employees directly about their preferences is the best way to ensure learning needs are met. Gain trust by asking for consent to ask neurodiverse employees ways on improving trainings. So that's important. It helps create a trusting relationship, especially so that in times of stress, like injury, employees can go to employers without fear. Neurodiverse employees can have anxiety, so be patient. Speak concise and in a neutral tone. Some employees may need additional support and freedom to ask questions to better understand. It is important to forge this trust early on. The best way to treat questions is treating them with respect, so that employees do not fear of being ridiculed in the future. So here's an example of a conversation that a employer and an employee may have. Are these the only chairs we can use? The employee asks. And then the manager says, these are the chairs we have, but if you need an accommodation, let me know. The employee asks, can I add my own chair cover, especially something for the armrests? The manager says, let's talk about that more after the training. We have to make sure if we can do that. So it's not like directly just saying like, no, it's, odd to have like a chair cover or things like that. It's being open-minded about any accommodations that are requested and also taking the time to look into it to make sure that it can be done. Also, some neurotypes have what is termed as black and white thinking. They cannot see the gray in between. And this is the way their brain sees situations, usually with only two solutions. It can lead to rigidity, believing there is only one right way to do things. So this is why it's important to be concise with directions and make sure that if there's multiple ways to do things, that it's all laid out in a concise way for them. An important topic is sensory overload. It is a state where the brain receives too much sensory input to process, leading to symptoms like anxiety, irritability, confusion, and physical discomfort. It can be triggered by common stimuli such as loud noises, bright lights, strong smells, and crowded spaces, but also by emotional stress, physical fatigue, or environmental changes. Sensory overload is a state of mind that makes it hard to not only process information, but it's also less likely that information that's being received will be retained. So if someone is going over having a sensory overload during a training, the training will more likely be unsuccessful. So recognizing triggers and using strategies like reducing exposure to stimuli and using sensory aids or finding quiet spaces can help manage that. Also too, one thing to mention as well, an emergency buddy is an important concept. You may call it something else, but the main goal is to ensure there is a trustworthy coworker for a neurodivergent employee in times of an emergency or sensory overload who can guide them during moments they are overwhelmed. So, important topic, sensitivities, especially when it comes to employees with autism, they may be extra sensitive to things like loud noises or bright lights. So it's important to ensure everyone is comfortable when training. So, converse with your employees, or, if you're an employee, converse with your manager, and let them know if there are any changes that can be made to the environment that could help your learning, and prevent sensory overload. While some of these can help during training, it may not be appropriate while equipment is operating. Some items that can be offered are white noise machines, access to white noise music, tinted glasses, and headphones. Also ensure that you are considering your auditory and visual needs for your employees. Neurodiverse people are prone to comorbidities, so visually you should have large text to describe images or steps for anyone with low vision. And when speaking, ensure that you are using a microphone if any employees have low hearing. Consider sensitivities to scents. For those who are sensitive to scents, some smells may be overwhelming, especially from machinery. There are ways to manage these scents personally and environmentally. For employee personal management, you can try masking those smells with like a Vicks vapor rub, like underneath your nose area, lavender, peppermint oil, or even toothpaste or chapstick. You can also use it inside of a mask. Also there's little breathing techniques you can do, breathing through your mouth or taking shallow breaths. I've even found some research of humming as a way to block a smell. Scented items like minty gum, strong mints, or Listerine strips are also very useful. For employee personal management, hygiene is also an important thing to consider. Wearing a clean uniform and socks daily to avoid carrying odors for all workers, and also letting workers who need it to take quick breaks for fresh air, especially if they're feeling overwhelmed. For environmental management, cleanliness is key. Just make sure that you're cleaning all surfaces using enzymatic cleaners and that the ventilation is good or ensuring proper air circulation. Tactile sensitivities. That may include discomfort from the material. If PPE, for example, has certain materials, it may be very discomfort. It may be uncomfortable, I mean. And also, as an employer, you should always ensure that there are hypoallergenic options, especially because, again, those comorbidities can be a thing, and we don't want to leave anyone excluded from PPE. Proprioception is the awareness of one's body. This is an important topic, especially when it comes to um, jobs that ask employees to use a lot of muscle and things like that and move around a lot because um, some neurotypes do not perceive themselves well, especially if they are hyper focused. They may even work themselves too hard physically without even realizing it until after a task is done because of their proprioception being different than other neurotypes. So be proactive with reminders of self. Todd is usually the one who reminds me at work if I, am like feeling really busy before a conference and I just start grabbing things. Um, he and I both know I have a bad back, but I will forget. So I'm always thankful that he's there to remind me. Um, Also keeping proprioception in mind, neurodivergent employees may need more reminders for stretching or changes to posture, like the beginning of this presentation mentioned. And again, like I mentioned before, just consider buying hypoallergenic solutions for repetitive tasks too, such as shoe insoles for standing employees or wrist protection for employees at the computer. For psychological ergonomics, consider getting fidget toys that work for your employees. And always allow employees to use fidget toys to relieve stress when possible, and especially when they ask. Consider proximity to like from employee to employee or employee to employer or employee to even trainer. Because certain neurotypes have uh a lot of discomfort when it comes to close proximity. And it's really important that you ask for consent in these types of situations, even in everyday interactions beyond trainings. Even something simple as placing a hand on an employee's shoulder may be extremely uncomfortable to a neurodivergent employee. So again, always ask for consent. I always find it's best practice myself. I love giving hugs, for example, at events and things like that, but I always ask like, hey, is it all right to give a hug? Because just having that consent, I feel like is very important. Um, and so when it comes to proximity, for example, during an interactive in-person training on how to go through a procedure, a trainer may want to show an employee something up close, like whether it's like a type of glove that they use or how to put it on. So a trainer should ask if it's all right to be up close before showing each step. Also, let the employee learn by going through the steps themselves. Also, it's really important to consider different types of communication. Some employees may prefer verbal or nonverbal communications or cues. Nonverbal isn't just about not talking. It's about using diverse communication methods like gestures or visuals, beyond speech. Also facing sensory challenges, processing language differently, like literal, not nuanced, or not being able to sense sarcasm. Sometimes certain neurotypes may even need to go into a nonverbal state. In other words, the employee shuts down due to overwhelm. And that requires patience and clear, direct communication, respecting their cues, and understanding their unique sensory processing needs to bridge the gaps. This is an important point right here. When you have a good relationship with your employees, it's better to have a plan in place or have communications beforehand, before a shutdown. That's essential for preparing for these moments. Though not required, some employees may even prefer having signs on their name badge that show their current availability verbally, or signs on their door or their desk. Color coding can be helpful. Like you could say, like green is like, okay, I can talk whenever I want. Um, like orange is in like, not feeling up to it. And maybe red is no, cannot talk right now. Um, this can also be helpful when employees wear headphones too. Also make sure when you make trainings that they are also clear. So an example to follow of some like signage. So this is an example of a notice let's say there's an area where a safety helmet is required. There's a little image on this blue sign that says notice at the top with a little exclamation point, yellow exclamation point. And then in big letters below that, it says safety helmet required in this area. And then there's a little figure off to the right with a blue helmet on. What another important thing to add on signs like this, not only making sure that there's clear information, but also making sure that there's a way to contact somebody who can help answer questions about these signs, whether it's somebody in a safety department in your workplace or somebody who is just able to answer those questions about what the sign is about. Um, just having a way for employees to get help when they have unanswered questions is good practice overall. So now we're going to go through some training methods. Universal design is an important training method, and essentially it just allows educators and learners to set clear goals, anticipate environmental barriers, create meaningful options, and fully embrace human variability. Essentially, it's the type of design that ensures that there's multiple ways to learn something. And that's why it's essentially anticipating any barriers your employees may have, and embracing human variability because everyone learns differently. So, also, it just ensures that everyone has the resources they need to learn processes regardless of their neurotype. So consider making step-by-step documents, signs, videos, and plan on showing processes in person. This way, everyone can have multiple options to learn the same information. Time-buffered schedules also allow for processing and reflection for all neurotypes. So if you're having a all-day training, let's say, consider having breaks during that training. Or if there is a long video, consider making breaks in those videos. A 15-minute break for every 1 to 2 hours in person or live is a good rule of thumb. And be sure to break it up with either activities or discussions. So an example for a live training may look something like having a 1.5 hours in the morning of pure training, maybe with 2 breakouts in between. Kind of breaking up that little bit of an hour and a half. Having a break from 11 to 11:15, just having that little 15-minute no training information given, just break for processing of information, right? 11:15 to 12:30, going back with the training, maybe with an activity in there. 12:30 to 1:30, giving them not 15 minutes, but allowing them to have food, since it's such a long day, giving them an hour break. And then like that little 15 minutes for brain processing is included in there. And then for the last 1 hour and 30 minutes, the training can have maybe like another two breakout sessions where people can quickly like be given a question, discuss with their peers, and then come back and have open dialogue. So what if you wanted to take that same roughly 6-hour training and record it? In other words, make it on demand and accessible at any time. That might look like 15 to 30-minute videos with questions in between. And this would probably be the best way to ensure that not only people can digest the media, but that if they have to take a break, they don't have to like fast forward through all the parts they've seen before. And understandably, that is a lot of editing. So breaking it up into hour-long videos is good, at least if there is a way for learners to pause and return to the content and not lose their progress. Even after all you can do to make a training, consider everyone's memory capacity. So on average, it is estimated 50% of what is learned from a training is immediately forgotten. And spaced learning can help retain what is taught. That's a topic I'm going to explain in a second. So spaced learning essentially is learning something again and again over time. Sorry about that. Learning something again and again over time instead of just cramming all that information into one day. You are actively retrieving or reviewing that information over the next, couple of weeks, maybe once a week over the next couple of weeks, or maybe, once a month over the next couple of months. And the reason being is because if you look at this graph that's on the slide, and I will describe it, there is along the x-axis or the horizontal axis, there is time. And time moves forward as we move along from left to right on the x-axis. On the y-axis is retention, and that is recording like the level of retention that an employee or a learner may have and the higher the little dot or the higher the line is on this graph, the more that is retained. So during this first curve, after someone learns something on day 0, the learning curve or the forgetting curve is so steep because there's nothing to remind them of anything they learned about and, actively like re-cement things in their brain. However, as there are more days of active retrieval or review, these little green lines in between, um, the learner remembers, and then this little curve along the x-axis starts to flatten out every single time somebody is reminded of something. So instead of completely losing all that information so that it goes to 0 along the y-axis, it actually starts to flatten out to the point where you just retain all that information and barely forget anything. So the last thing I wanted to mention about a training and how to help your learners best is that there's evidence showing that information retention for all neurotypes is also affected by location. So employees are more likely to remember the information spot they learned that information. So this means that procedures should be taught in the spot they will be used. So if they're using certain types of machinery or unloading packages or trying to put like if for example, if they work in a grocery store and they're trying to put things onto the shelves, they should be learning how to do that in the spot that they will be doing that in. So we created a checklist for you to discuss with your employees and apply to your trainings. So I'm going to stop sharing my PowerPoint really quick, and then I will start sharing my screen again momentarily. Here we go. So this is in the Google Drive that I shared before. If you're not able to scroll up to find that link, we can reshare that link once I am done with the presentation. But essentially, this document is important because it's you don't have to use the exact same document, but it's a good idea of what you can do to improve your trainings. So there's three columns, and the first column is the type of consideration that you would want to consider for your employees. The middle column is reviewing your current training against the type of consideration. And then the final column is what improvements can you make now that you're thinking about it and understanding that that's something to change. So the first row is the consideration is can employees freely ask questions? And the person who filled this out said the employees can ask their managers via email after the training. So, an employer or a manager may be filling this out with their employees, or maybe in a little safety committee or something like that, and keeping track of all their answers and stuff. They use those to create an improvement. The improvement for this one is we plan on making the training more interactive so employees can freely ask questions and that the trainer is respectful of all questions. So again, this is shared in the Google Drive so that you guys can actually, it's blank. There's one that's blank, but there's this example one as well.
It's really important, as Jamie highlighted, to report signs and symptoms early on. That really promotes prevention and successful mitigation. And employees should have input. You can help your company put ergonomic changes into place. And again, as Jamie referenced, many of these are fairly easy to implement and don't cost a lot of money. With regard to inclusive training considerations, remember all the accommodations that Katie mentioned that can help support a diverse, especially a neurodiverse workforce. And when creating trainings, remember to consider the needs of all employees to improve retention. So we thank you for carving out time to join us this afternoon. Please be careful out there, stay safe, stay healthy. We have included the resources that were utilized for the development of this content in the ergonomics portion. It was primarily provided by MyOSHA and Federal OSHA. And Katie's got a rich resource list that she draws from here for her portion of the presentation. Thanks for including that info, Katie. And if you are interested in training for your employers, feel free to reach out to Katie to give us a little bit more information about how we might make that happen. Again, thanks for joining us. This content or this presentation was supported through the MyOSHA Set division. And again, we're very grateful for that partnership.